Today is February 23rd, 2021. The time is 7 p.m. This is the regularly scheduled monthly meeting of the Southampton Local School Committee. All 5 committee members are present, as well as our superintendent of schools and our building principal, along with members of the public. First item on the agenda tonight is public comments. This is time set aside for the public. Any member of the public that has a connection to Norris may speak at this time. This is not meant to be a Q&A nor a debate. Speakers, when identified, should state their name and connection to Norris and make their statement. Any supporting documents and/or material should be emailed to the committee at southsc@scm.hr-k12org. Entertain a motion to set aside 15 minutes for public comment. Each speaker to be allotted 3 minutes, and no one to speak twice unless we've exhausted all those wishing to speak.
So moved.
Motion made and seconded.
Second.
Seconded by Allison. In favor, Austin?
Rogers, aye.
Allison?
Right on, aye.
Julianne?
Tauscher, aye.
Greg?
Bennett, aye.
And Lumber, aye. Any member of the public that wants to speak, you can just identify yourself in the chat. And we'll go ahead and call on you. So again, we're in the public comment section. Any member of the public that wishes to speak, just identify themselves in the chat, and we'll recognize you in the order in which you identify yourself. Michael, I did shut the chat off, so it only goes to the host. I don't have anybody on my side. Are you showing any names?
No, nothing here either.
Okay. Okay, last call for public comment. Okay, time is 7:03 and we will end public comment. Next item on the agenda is approval of minutes. I have outstanding the minutes, I believe, of December 8th, 12th and 18th.
John, I just have one question before you move to the next agenda item.
Sure.
For public comment, so when we receive an email, I believe we received one email since our last regular scheduled meeting that I didn't know if we needed to enter into our official documents here. It was, let's see.
Do you have the email?
I did. Let me see. Here it is. It's Catherine Taylor from February 10th, Wednesday, February 10th. Do you want me to read it?
Sure.
It's not very long. Hello, I'm writing to request you devise a new game plan for returning to in-person learning following yet another break from school. I know of at least 3 families that are taking out-of-state vacations or hosting out-of-state visitors. Thanksgiving and Christmas breaks proved that people aren't willing to adhere to safety guidelines, leading to school going full remote in both occasions. Trying the same thing over and over and expecting different results is that definition of insanity. My poor second grader, cohort B, has only had 7 in-person learning days in the last 9 weeks. The very frequent and short notice stops and starts are extremely unsettling and are 100% avoidable. If we use a little more caution, I'm not sure what the rush is to push these kids back in the building just to then pull them right back out. Southampton had more in-person learning than pretty much any other school in our area. Why now with the never-ending red status, mutant variations, and a vaccine on the horizon, are we not learning from our mistakes? Do it differently this time, make a choice to have a more seamless transition back to in-person. I don't want to wait any longer to have my son go to school, but I have to make sure he and the rest of my family stays safe. This is just a terrible time in our human existence, but we don't have to perpetuate it by repeating our mistakes. We can never force our way back to normal. We have to respect the virus and play by its rules in order to defeat it. Please consider staying remote after February break and consider not having April break. What we don't need now is another vacation. Don't give people the opportunity to travel. We are getting so close to some form of normalcy. Please do the right thing. It's just a little bit longer. Thank you, Kate Taylor, second grade parent.
Okay, so that was dated February 10th, 2021. We'll incorporate that into the minutes.
I think that's the only one we received. Were there any other ones? I think that was it.
Okay. Approval of the minutes. I think that the last two hanging items were December 12th and 18th, and then we also have January 21st, 27th, and 29th for consideration. So everybody had a chance to review them. Are there any corrections to any of them? Hearing none, I would entertain a motion to accept all five as a package.
So moved.
Moved by Austin, seconded by Allison. Discussion, hearing none. Call for the vote. Austin?
Rogers, aye.
Allison?
Aye.
Julianne?
Tauscher, aye.
Greg?
Bennett, aye.
And Lumbra, aye. Okay. After the meeting, I'll take care of posting those to the town website. Circulation of warrants. I believe you all received an email from Denise about two warrants that came through. One being, I believe, memory serves me, general expenses, and the other one being for vocational tuition on behalf of the town. Were there any questions on any of those? I did go ahead and sign them. I didn't see any questions on my end. All right. Correspondence outside of the public comment section, I don't have anything. Okay, we'll move on to our reports. Principals report.
Do you want me to share that, or is someone else sharing it?
Let's see. You can share it now.
Okay. All right. So thank you to the Southampton School Committee for providing a delicious lunch for all staff on February 12th, right before vacation. Excuse me, from Good Eats to Go here in Southampton. And we truly appreciate your thoughtfulness. It was a very nice lunch that we had 6 feet apart from each other. Grab and go. The reading committee met with Kate Mesmer on February 11th. We went over some reading curriculum that teachers are interested in possibly pursuing. We only are going to be looking at curriculum that have been vetted by the by Ed Reports and found on the Curate list, which is a curriculum rated by teachers on the DESE website. So these are all successful curriculums that we would be looking for, not just, anybody can come up with anything. We're making sure that they've been vetted. And a couple of those that have made our list, we have 6. And of those 6, I know that Wit and Wisdom is one, Wonders, Core Knowledge, and it's either ARC Core or ARC Core. So those are 4 out of the 6. I cannot remember the other 2. I have to look it up. Unfortunately, the reading interventionist teacher I previously mentioned pursued another job opportunity prior to signing her contract with us. And then I interviewed another candidate and offered the position to her. However, due to COVID-related difficulties, she's unable to accept the position. And it's more about what I'm finding is, and I said this before, people have kids at home, and so they can't come into the building full time to work. So I might be able to work something out with this individual to come at a part-time basis, which is not what we want right now, but the position has been posted for about a month. We also had 2 paraprofessionals accept other positions outside of the educational field. This leaves us with 3 paraprofessional openings right now at Norris. The positions are currently posted, and we have been interviewing for them. Grade 2 returned for in-person learning for 4 days a week beginning on Monday. And Miss Emily Gagne, who is in Norris Para, which is why it left a hole, has accepted the position for the remainder of the school year. Ms. Gagne has been with us for a few years. She is a certified teacher, and we're really happy to have her. Right before vacation on February 12th, all the students that would be going to her room, whether they were in school on that day or they were in cohort A and they were home, all came to Norris and met each other and met Ms. Gagne and spent a little bit of time in her classroom. It was really nice. Parents were willing to come during the middle of the day in order to drop their kiddos off for that. So it was really good. There is a grant out there that Kate Mesmer is applying for us. She actually submitted it today. It's called the After School Out of School Time Grant. And I think it's up to $50,000 to have students come in over the summer for, say, a beefed up summer school. So we would be able to invite more students than just special ed students this summer if we receive this grant. And I'm hoping that Norris teachers would be interested in working so that we would have kids in the building from preschool up to, we really didn't talk about what grade levels, but I'm hoping all grade levels. And this would be based on our FastBridge reading results. And we would invite those students in who need the most support. Our enrollment is 452 students are enrolled. You can see there are 386 students in person, 48 school of choice students are with us. And 2 of our students from last time have become Southampton residents, so they're no longer school of choice. And 35 students attend 4 days a week in grades 3 through 6. We have 58 on the Florida virtual remote model, 2 out of district placements, and 4 are receiving drop-in services only. Does anybody have any questions?
Anybody in the committee? I did have one question. On your first item about the reading program, can you just remind us the timeline on when you're looking to reach a decision on that?
Yeah, we have to have a decision and we have to have materials purchased by the end of the school year. That money goes away as June 30th. It's this year's budget.
Okay.
So,
anticipating to roll it out next September.
Yes. Yep.
Okay. Other committee members on the principal's report? No? Okay. Thank you. Superintendent's report. And we should, for the record, just note that we're accepting the February 23rd memo that the superintendent forwarded to us and just make it part of the minutes.
Yeah, there's so much going on now with changes and recommendations related to the pandemic. I thought I would dedicate my time summarizing those for you. They apply, the stuff I wrote applies to 3 agenda items later in the meeting. So I don't know, John, if you'd like me to just talk about it then or read it now or share some of the highlights now.
No, I think the pieces that apply later on, we can bring those up at that point, so we can just continue, have a free flow conversation.
Okay. Versus
hearing it now and starting later.
Yeah, I mean, it included the governor and the commissioner having public statements today, and it's just hot on everybody's mind. So.
Okay. All right, so we'll defer those talking points until we come up with the other side of it. Is there an update from our Pto Liaison?
They have not had another meeting since the last one. I did see on their Facebook post that they did make a sign for the teachers, but they have not had a meeting since then.
They were supposed to meet tonight.
Oh.
And then they canceled it because the school committee meeting is tonight. So they're going to meet in March.
Okay.
I didn't know if you were in contact with them or not. Alex.
No, they haven't said anything to me.
Okay.
And is there an update on the collaboration?
Their next meeting is next month. So they meet every other month. So there's no update. I missed last month's meeting because it was the same time as ours. I haven't looked to see if the meetings overlap for next month, but I think they don't. And then they're hiring for they have an interim executive director that they're hiring for and a permanent executive director right now. So that's kind of the only thing I've seen come across right now.
Okay. School council liaison?
There have been no meetings since the last report, and the next meeting is scheduled for March 10th at 5 p.m.
Okay. And Greg, do you have a Hampshire regional update, or do you want to get back to us on that?
I'll get back to you unless I can put Mike on the spot and just ask him to give a quick summary of what the last meeting was. That was at 6 o'clock today that I couldn't attend, but before that.
Yeah, I can't separate them too. All I have is winter athletics in my head from 10 minutes ago. So, yeah, that would.
All right.
And Greg, I can share this for you, and when you get home, if you have time to come back, we can do it. But Greg did share with all of us that one of our Southampton representatives has tendered his letter of resignation from Hampshire Regional, Corey. I don't know when the effective date, if that was immediate or not, but there will be an opening for a citizen from Southampton who wants to step up to go on that committee. The 5 districts agreement working group would be myself. We met last week, and I believe that we are making significant, steady progress. And hopefully maybe another 2 meetings or so, we will have something in draft form to get to all the committee members to get feedback.
Nice.
Everybody to see what their take is on it. I would say that the last meeting we had, I felt was the most productive. They all have been productive. But the last meeting we had Attorney Roach with us from our legal team. And we had a very productive free flow of discussion ideas and why we wanted certain positions in there. And I think it clarified things for her as what we were looking for. And I look forward to seeing the next draft of her comments coming back to us on that. The next committee is the Southampton Teachers Association, and I did receive an email from their president, Elizabeth Cawley, that she did not have a report tonight. She is in attendance, but that there was no report. And I don't know if Matthew is here. If there is a update from the select board. Matthew. I'm not seeing Matthew. So we'll take a pass on the select board update, which brings us to the Bobby Jones Hour. Fiscal year 21-22 updates in all their glory.
So lucky for everybody, it won't take an hour. I will bring the next quarterly report in probably April for the month ending March 31st. And then we're meeting on, I believe it's the 8th, to discuss the 22 budget. So I have some work to do and I need to get together with Eliza. So I don't have too many comments on that at this point either.
Okay. And so I think from the committee standpoint on the 8th, it's, I don't know where you are and where you're going to be in your process on that, but the committee wanted to have some discussion and dialogue about extras or new things coming into the budget prior to the committee seeing it on the tail end. Not that we're asking that every thought that we have be incorporated in, only that the committee be heard on what they think their priorities are, and then that just be taken into consideration when the administration's building the budget. And then obviously when the final version comes out, we'll see where the chips fall and that.
Okay. So it's my hopes to at least have the basic numbers to kind of let you know where you might fall percentage wise.
Gotcha. Okay.
And then that could factor into the conversation, I think.
Any questions for Bobby on the budget or the update? No. Okay. Bobby, we don't have any new information on the proposed additional CARES funding coming out from the Biden administration, or do we?
We do. We do have some information. There's a piece that's out there that I think we need to get some clarification on. And I know we started looking at it today, Michael and I. So I'd just like to get together with him before I bring that forward. But we could probably bring that to the meeting on the 8th as well.
Okay, fair enough.
Definitely.
All right. Everybody good? Okay. Thank you, Bobby. We have no policy updates. Old business, pandemic response coordination with the local Board of Health. And is...
Stephanie's not here.
Okay.
She did, and she said she couldn't make it tonight, but she did have an email in response to an email from the board. I think maybe now the committee's seen that exchange.
Yes, I read it the first time, and then I realized tonight when I was getting ready for this meeting that it only went to myself. So I forwarded it on to the whole committee to review. I don't know. Well, I'll just... I could pass along a couple of quick observations she had. Sure. And I wouldn't want to put words in her mouth. But I do think it's worth noting a couple of things. The board met, and we were happy they provided us with some feedback about how they were thinking about the contact tracer. I know Stephanie was a little disappointed we weren't informed about their meeting because, we would have been interested in having a presence. I think she and our nurses in principle felt that the notes shared showed a little bit of a misunderstanding of the kind of support we needed from them. So there's still a bit of a disconnect there. And we're also a little disappointed that, that the idea of not pursuing the contact tracing has kind of been shut down for the time being. So Stephanie had many more specifics in what she wrote to you all about it, but that was just a couple of general observations.
Do we know if we're beholden to the Board of Health to get our own contact tracer, or if we can do it on our own?
I think at this point, we're pretty sure we cannot. They have the keys to the Maven tracking system, which, we could not be a part of without being under their umbrella.
Can we reach out to whoever controls the Maven system and ask them independently, bypassing our Board of Health? I'd be willing to make a motion if that's going to help.
Yeah, I don't think that's a practical possibility, but
so really they've completely tied our hands with their decision when they wouldn't even meet with us to discuss it at their meeting when they made that. Great. I don't really find that too particularly functional in the spirit of cooperation.
Okay.
Thank you.
Anybody else? All right, so my initial thoughts on this is that, I do appreciate the flow of communication coming back and forth that, I think Katie is doing on their behalf. And Stephanie's feedback going back, everything being documented and having a paper trail is all positive. I guess I kind of take the stance of, and I've shared this separately with administration, that if I'm in a situation where one of my kids has a potential issue, my first phone call is going to be to Northampton area peds. And I anticipate that the nurse on call is going to give me direction, and/or I'm going to hear back from the physician and they're going to give me direction. And I'm going to act on that. I'm not going to wait for a contact tracer to contact me. I see no reason why we don't follow the same approach here. I know we can't issue quarantine instructions, right? That's a Board of Health thing. But our nursing staff, we have 2 full-time dedicated nurses in Norris, presumably every day that school's open. Yes, there's vacation and sick time and things of that nature, but again, highly competent or they wouldn't be there. They're registered nurses. We insure them. They fall under the direction, I don't know the whole reporting structure, if they fall directly under Stephanie, who is another competent licensed medical professional. They all fall under the school physician, a doctor. Yes, he gives orders in that, and it's much less than what would happen in a pediatrics facility. But I see no reason why our nurses cannot give direction, and if they see a call, they should make the call. And I, for one, as a committee member, would wholeheartedly support any decision they did. And I really doesn't matter to me if someone's going to slap their hand. If you're not going to be on the front line with us and how we're doing it, then we just need to go forward. The days of the school nurse giving you a lollipop and putting a Band-Aid on your knee, those were the 70s. Today's nursing staff is much different and competent, and we're a year into this pandemic. I'm pretty confident that they know what a close contact is or isn't and can make these decisions on the fly. Different story if they're not comfortable doing it. But I really don't know. I don't see value in continuing to push the envelope back and forth between us and the Board of Health. I think to the extent that they can, they are cooperating 100% with us. We're not in their shoes. They're not in our shoes. It's a challenge. I don't necessarily want to get into a tug of war, but what I've heard is sometimes maybe our staff doesn't want to cross that line. And by staff, I mean our nurses. And if that's the case, I just want to send a message that as a committee member, I support them crossing that line if that's what they choose to do. They're not going to get repercussions or reprimands from me as a committee member. And whether that carries any weight or not, I'm not sure. But Eliza, did you want to jump in?
I just want to agree with what you're saying. And, Geraldine Swanson did stop by my office the Friday before vacation. It was either Thursday or Friday before vacation to clarify and say, what's the problem? And we did talk about that. And I said, the problem is that we can't wait for the contact tracer to call these families when we know that some of these kids are close contacts. We want to be able to just call home and say, please do not send your child to school tomorrow because they will be identified as a close contact. Please wait for the call from the contact tracer, but in the meantime, they shouldn't come to school. And she agreed that would be okay to do now. It wasn't okay, or it didn't feel okay a month ago. I think Sharon was doing her job and kind of reminding my nurses that is her job. So we didn't really want to, step on toes, and then going forward from that day, there was some miscommunication about how I'm feeling, which is I am not hesitating at all when if we need to either, go remote with the whole class or not, or whatever, like that decision I can make anytime. But, and John, I told you I would obviously be in contact with you and with Michael, obviously. It's not like I'm closing down the whole school single-handedly, but I think that now that Geraldine and I, we have this understanding that my nurses will be at least reaching out to families, not telling them how long they're quarantining for or who has to isolate or anything like that, but just letting them know that the contact tracer will be giving them that information, but not to send their child to school. We're now in a better place, and we can just move forward.
Yeah, I agree 100%. I think we can empower our nurses to make this decision because we're not new to this. So I think that professional nurses a year into this pandemic can identify who is within 6 feet for more than 15 minutes and be the first line. I think moving swiftly is important. So
it's very important. But I hear that on Sunday we had some kids who shouldn't have come into school on Monday, and that there was a lot of phone calls having to be made because we were waiting on kids to be cleared to come back to school. So without that letter of them being cleared to come back to school, they can't come back to school unless they have that letter from the Board of Health, right? So it's again, put some stress on kids are now going to miss a day of school and they really don't need to. They can come back. We know they can come back, but they can't come back until they're cleared. There has to be, you know, a legitimate letter that says they're cleared. So that's, and I know that we're not the only card in town. And that's the other message that I received loud and clear is that Norris School is not the only, you know, place having difficulty right now in Southampton. And I get that, you know, Sharon is really busy and I know that everybody's working really hard. We want kids in school too. So if we know that they're sitting at home and we know they could be in school, but they can't come back to school unless they get clearance, that just feels like, just give us the clearance so they can get back to school.
Can we accept a letter from the primary care or does it have to be the Board of Health?
I think it's the Board of Health.
It is the Board of Health, but so say, you know, like you have to quarantine for 10 days. You can call them on day 3 and they can already write the letter and address it to the day 10.
I feel like they'd probably have to evaluate.
They can. I had it.
Yeah.
Well, if someone else in your family becomes positive within that 10 days, then doesn't the 10 days reset? I mean, so that it's not really, you can't really pre-write the letter.
Right. Right. You have to make sure you're asymptomatic.
I know.
Michael?
I just want to be clear, though, with this second example Elise is giving, where we feel the real obligation to communicate with families is at the front end, where identifying a close contact. And I think we feel comfortable telling our nurses they can go ahead and do that. But Elisa, I don't think you're suggesting we would tell somebody when they can return. Right?
No.
That's still the Board of Health. So
right.
It's only in that first part where we would feel the need to provide some communication ourselves.
Correct.
Thank you.
So the interesting thing that I find is that as a private employer, one of my responsibilities oversees the HR department is we have to comply with 454 CMR 31 under mass.gov, which requires the employer to make the decision of who the close contacts are on site and address those and send them on their way and then notify the Board of Health for follow-up. Generally, and I will give Sharon credit for this, that her turnaround time appears to be 24 to 48 hours, where several other communities are at 7 or 8 days before that's coming. So, you know, again, I don't want this to all be negative towards the Board of Health. They limited resources just like us. But I assume, and I just had it pulled up, that while the public schools specifically are exempt from 454, I think it's probably just means we don't have to follow it, but maybe we should be following it. It doesn't say that we're barred from it. But also on December 7th of 2020, the Commonwealth of Mass Executive Office of Health and Human Services, Department of Public Health, Bureau of Infectious Diseases issued updated guidelines about the quarantine that specifies the letter and what we have to do. Again, this is all about what the employer's responsibilities are. And to me, this covers 100% of what we just said our nurses should do. And as an employer that doesn't have certified nurses on staff, I have to hold this standard. So I think this is all the ammunition that our nurses need in order to handle the front end. And I'm not hearing opposition from any committee member that indicates that they would not support our nurses in the event that they make a call on the front end that they feel is medically sound. So I don't think we need to take a vote, but I think, Austin, if you can make sure it's clearly noted in the record that our concerns on the front end, then absolutely we want to turn it over to the Board of Health and let Sharon or her designee the course of action that they need. We're going to wait for the letter before the student is allowed, or faculty member is allowed back in the school. We're already doing that, correct? Mm-hmm. Yes. So is there anything else on coordination.
No, and I just want to say, I didn't mean to muddy the waters on the tail end of everything, but, Geraldine and I had a really good discussion. I feel like, if we thought, our hand was getting slapped in a month ago because Sharon had a job to do, but we were trying to be as efficient as possible because my nurses are awesome and they're right on top of everything. We know now that we have that approval to go ahead and make phone calls to parents, but not give them advice about quarantining or isolating or anything like that. So I feel like we're in a better place.
Okay.
I'm not sure if this is quite appropriate to say here, so I'm going to do it anyway, but I've just been extremely, pleased with all the conduct of the nurses and the actions they've taken over this term of this COVID epidemic. And I'm not sure if I've ever expressed that, verbally in the committee meeting. So I'd like to make a motion just to support for all the wonderful work that our school nurses have done in this time that is definitely demanding on their skills.
Thank you. They are under the teacher's contract, so technically they're supposed to have vacations off. And I know everybody's working super hard and teachers are doing more than they've ever done too. The nurses have been on the phone, all the time during vacations, especially on the weekends, right before we come back. And it's stressful because they want to do a great job. So I can't tell them enough how much I appreciate them, but I just don't feel like it's enough. So I just wanted to say that too.
Okay. Do we need to have another or more conversation about consideration of hiring a school-based contact tracer? Or did we kind of wrap that all up in our first bullet point? Okay. Next is letter C, review of physical distancing practices. Everything going well? I have a feeling, my memory's escaping me, but I have a feeling it's had something to do with an article and just starting the conversation. Anyone?
So we started that conversation a meeting or so ago, John, and the latest CDC guidance speaks to physical distancing a bit, as does the latest DESE transportation guidance, as does the commissioner's pronouncement today indirectly. So all of these next three items seem a little bit of a package.
Okay. Why don't we take them all up together then?
Yeah.
Objection. So that includes the review of the pandemic transportation practices, as well as review of bus ridership policy. And was there supposed to be an appeal coming in tonight for busing?
Well, it's on.
Is it on here?
So I guess my question is, I have a family who's asking for bus service that lives at the same exact address of another family that received bus service, and it's also a hardship. And I was going to ask for you to approve it. I should not have assumed that it would just be an automatic approval. So I'm not prepared to, obviously I don't give the name, but it's College Highway. It's not safe to cross.
Do you know the other child that is currently getting the exemption? Did they come in under the appeal process and get approved?
Yes.
Okay, so we've already vetted that. We've vetted the household for one child.
Yeah.
And now just asking for us to extend what we already approved for one child to the other child within the household.
No, it's not the same household. It's the same
address.
Duplex. It's the same duplex, side by side house.
Okay.
The family on the next. Yeah.
So
go ahead, Austin.
I was just going to make the motion unless you have more discussion.
Just the two questions that I would want to ask is, A, is there room on the existing bus?
Yes.
And probably that's the only question that I would ask.
Yeah.
Under our current policy of spacing.
Yes,
okay.
There's room on the bus.
Austin?
I'd like to make a motion to approve the exemption.
I'll second.
Seconded. Any discussion? Roll call. Austin?
Rogers, aye.
Julianne?
Tavsher, aye.
Allison?
Right on I.
Greg?
Bennett, aye.
And Lumber, aye. Passes. So I guess if we can talk, let's try to take this in pieces or chunks. So right now our busing, I believe we're at 23% capacity or 33% capacity as a max, and every third window or every other window is open. Go ahead, Michael.
It's 3 windows are open on each side, so a total of 6 windows are open at about 6.5 inches each.
Okay.
The current practice. And the new DESE guidance in terms of ventilation is to have all windows open down 1 notch, which is just under 2 inches. And then in extreme weather, having only every other window open down that 1 notch.
Okay. And we went to 3 windows on each side was done by vote of committee?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, I don't know if your committee voted on it. I know New Hingham voted on it, and we worked that out with the bus company, and we wanted to make it consistent in all 5 districts. So I think that's how it originated.
Okay. So I guess I'm kind of not happy, but I'm kind of okay with leaving it to administration. You know, if this is going to be uniformed across the district, I don't necessarily want to be the one committee that objects to it. Have you had any other opposition to this other than Chesterfield Goshen?
No, I don't. I frankly don't think it makes a lot of difference whether we have 3 windows at 6.5 inches or all the windows at 2 inches. That is okay, and I think we can just. I don't think we need you to take action on that. There is the issue of extreme cold where we wanted to go with every other window only open at 1 notch. If you're comfortable, we'll proceed with that. If that's worthy of discussion or a vote, that would be helpful, but I don't feel it's really necessary. Maybe, especially as we get to slightly warmer weather, maybe.
Right.
Quick question about the 3 windows that are down the 6 inches or however many inches. Are they 3 all in a row or 3 spaced out, like 1 front, 1 middle, 1 back?
Spaced out.
Okay. And does a kid have to sit in that seat, or is that one of the empty seats?
I don't know, to tell you the truth. Well, they don't. Do they skip rows? I don't think you skip a row at all.
Well, they do the 1 in, 1 out, and I can't imagine a kid being that 1 in right next to the window with it wide open and below 30.
Yeah.
So that's why I'm asking.
Yeah, hopefully they can swing that.
I haven't heard, if a kid is sitting there, I haven't heard a complaint. Most of our buses are not at capacity, so I can imagine that if you didn't want to sit there, you could sit somewher else. So yeah, I saw what was happening on Facebook, but I did not have anybody complain about busing at all for Norris.
So I lean more towards just leaving it up to the administration to decide, how you guys want to interpret the recommendations and do what you think is best. I don't feel the need to, step on your toes and create something that's going to bind you when flexibility might be the best thing that you got going for you right now.
I would agree, with anything, as long as whatever you're doing is in compliance with current regulations, whether it be CDC or DESE, I don't think the committee needs to interject.
I agree.
If you choose to deviate from that, I think the committee needs to be aware of it.
Okay, very good.
So that gets us back, well, that doesn't get us back. That gets us on to now seating on the bus. So right now there's a maximum of 24 individuals on the bus, and I think each bus has a monitor, so it's only 23 students if we were at maximum capacity under the current regulations, which doing that caused us to go to the 2-mile radius in order to be able to meet our state requirement to provide transportation to everyone in excess of 2 miles without adding additional busing. We talked about this briefly last Thursday during our COVID update. Tonight, whether, I guess tonight we need input from administration. What are your thoughts? What are you thinking? Are we staying the course? Do you want to entertain some sort of progressive change, or do you want to just load the buses up and pick everybody up in town?
So I have, before putting the size of the radius aside for a second, I think the distancing between kids on the bus, to me, is kind of tied with our thinking about distancing between kids at school. And so that's why I wrote this memo that kind of ties some of the different recommendations that are flying around right now together. And can I just take a couple minutes to explain that? So CDC came out with some updated guidance on February 12th, which really says we should be getting kids back to school. But if you read it closely, they still say having layered mitigation strategies is important. Physical distancing, at least 6 feet, should be maximized to the greatest extent possible. So that's the CDC saying that. Then they go on to say at the elementary level, they think kids should be coming back in person more so than at the secondary level. But they do then go on to say if a community is experiencing substantial, which is an orange category for them, or high, which is red, transmission, then they think elementary schools should be hybrid. So even the CDC wanting kids in school at the elementary level still says if community transmission is high, they think the hybrid model is the way to go. Now, DESE's come out with this new bus transportation that basically says on elementary buses, forget about any limitations. If the kids are wearing masks, you can go with the old school limits on the bus, regardless of what's going on in the community. So DESE's really lifted the cap on buses, and it makes our administrators a little uncomfortable. Then today, the commissioner this morning, and then followed up by the governor this afternoon, they're saying we want kids back in school by April, particularly at the elementary level. But if you read closely, the guidance, it's not guidance, it's just the commissioner saying he's asking the board for the authority to make this happen. And in his writing today, he still says in person doesn't necessarily mean, it could mean hybrid. So they're being a little cute right now. They're saying they want all the elementary kids at school, but there may be circumstances under which hybrid is as good as you should do. And they do quote the CDC recommending 6 feet where feasible. So the commissioner even says where feasible, 6 feet's good, but a minimum of 3 feet. So to me, the way this looks is we should really be looking to have more kids in school, particularly at the elementary level. We may no longer need to be at 6 feet, and I'm willing to think about that, and I'm just one player, and I think others are willing to start looking at reducing the 6 feet. But then I come back to even what the CDC says. If you're in an elementary school and you've got high community transmission, hybrid is maybe you shouldn't go any further than hybrid. So that would lead me to the recommendation of once Southampton gets out of the red for a time period of your choosing, then maybe it's the time to either have more kids on the bus or get rid of the cohorts or both. But I would think you'd want some period of time where we have less than 25 new cases every 2 weeks before we start not that we couldn't start planning now for having more kids on the bus or getting rid of the cohorts, but I think I wouldn't want to recommend acting on that until the community transmission comes down a little bit. Anyway, that's my speech. Sorry that was so long.
Michael, do you think that when they're talking about, bringing more in and there's this big push, are they, my feeling is that they're talking to the communities who are full remote we're a community that really has pushed and thought really hard about how to safely get as much in-person learning as possible. When I look at some surrounding towns, I see, some kids in some close towns that haven't been inside the school in the last year.
Yeah.
So I feel like all of these guidelines are pushing these towns that have been kind of stuck in this full remote because of what other, contracts that have occurred or, And then when I look at the CDC document and what you've just read off, and I look at our community transmission rate of 55.8 daily incidence rate per 100,000, firmly in the red, that we're doing exactly what the CDC is telling us to, and we've pushed it to the line.
Yeah, I think that's true. If you do look, I think the politicians, they get a little gray with this on purpose. I think they're very angry of the places that remain fully remote. But but the commissioner does say, and I'm just going to quote here, ideally, my initial goal is to bring all elementary school students back to in-person learning 5 days a week this April. So, they're playing it both ways a little bit. Mm-hmm. And that leaves us to kind of navigate that.
Yeah. One thinking I was, I think where we have the classes that can stay 6 feet, I'm not sure if they need that Wednesday remote day. So I don't know if that's something that needs to be looked at and discussed, but I think I like the plan of making a plan for when we are out of this red zone to then start advancing. Because all of these layered mitigation strategies that we've done have shown each time there's been no in-house transmission. So
I think that the Wednesday is mostly still needed to fit in prep time.
Prep time for what if
both are in?
It's contracted that teachers get a prep time.
Yeah. So Julianne, even though it might not have to be the whole Wednesday prep time afternoon 1 to 3:20 time that teachers have, it can be looked at. One thing I was thinking is, could we do half days on Wednesdays for the cohorts that are in 4 days now? So do 4.5 days and keep Wednesday afternoons for cleaning for the custodians and the prep time for the teachers. But I'd have to get creative if we were to have them full in on Wednesdays in order to add the special teacher that I haven't hired, the music teacher, to give them more prep time than they have now. I have to change I feel like I would have to change the special schedule because contractually they do have to have a certain amount per week. And if I completely take Wednesdays off, those other days that they're getting it doesn't give them enough time.
So previously, before when we were in a normal schedule of pre-COVID, was there prep time scattered with the special? How did...
4 days, 4 or 5 days a week, they would have a special, and it would be a longer time. Right now, they're down to 35 minutes a day. Before, it was 45 minutes. We had to cut it down to 35 because we had to have time to clean in between each special. So if they go to the library, they go to the gym, he has to be able to sanitize between classes. So, we cut back daily, but added it on Wednesday.
Okay. Oh, I see.
And this is, I feel like over the last week, I know it's coming, and we're going to talk about this at our principals meeting this week too, is, when is it go time, and how, when do we plan for now the slow return of kids and getting creative about teachers have to have their prep time. And before, it was really good to have that chunk on Wednesday because they were posting for online work and in-school work. And now the K-2 teachers, the kids are in school and they're not posting online, so they have less of that to do. Although, we still have we're still working really hard, and everybody knows that. I'm not trying to take away from that, but time to do this. So I think it's good to talk about it now, or to begin the conversation.
Mm-hmm.
I agree. I'd much rather try to hammer out a plan now that maybe we discuss over the next 2 or 3 weeks, much like we did back in August, which changed several times as more information became known, but start to create that roadmap versus if we're going to, in theory, try to look to meet this April deadline, if we have, between now and then, we have 3+ weeks under or out of the red zone, what would that look at? Would we be looking to how we start in September, a phase, grade by grade, maybe over a week period, or we bring everybody back? Have that dialogue, and then I kind of go both ways on this particular issue, but you know, there's that elephant in the room of the April vacation. You know, we had the December vacation or December break, and we had a spike. February, we just had the break. Are we going to have a spike or not? I don't know. I think we had 2 positives today came out in the email. Like the email, I kind of, you know, they blur over now because there's so many of them. I just basically ignore the COVID numbers or reports until I see something on Facebook to get my attention to go look for it. But do we cut April vacation and then shorten the year? We've already pushed it out. I think we're at 3 snow days now, 4 snow days out of our 5.
3.
3.
Feels like that.
But I'd much rather have these conversations now than versus the first week of April, because I believe it gives more time to solicit feedback. I would be curious, I'm not curious, I would be looking for feedback from folks that aren't represented here right now. i.e., I'd like to hear what Elizabeth's take on all this is and what her thoughts are. You know, other folks maybe have some ideas outside the box that the committee isn't necessarily thinking of. I feel like waiting till our March meeting would be too late, because we're meeting the 4th week. There's 5 Wednesdays in March. We're meeting that 4th Wednesday, I believe. Maybe we start tacking this onto our COVID meetings. Again, just as conversation, not that we're necessarily looking to change anything, but get input. We could have more voices at the table if we plan this out. Just a thought.
So I'd like to see, when we are ready, I'd like to see phased in still, because I think the feedback before was that gives a little bit of time to work out kinks slowly. You know, even if it's just like in 2 chunks or something, just to be able to work out those issues. I think, you know, like Julianne said, a lot of those angry statements by the governor and the commissioner are aimed at like Amherst. So I'll put that on the record. Amherst, get your kids back in school. This is getting ridiculous now. But, you know, we were avant-garde the whole time. So I don't think that the governor can wag the finger at us, because we pushed and, you know, everyone worked real hard. Our staff worked real hard, and we got our kids in and we kept them safe. And we've shown that. We've proven the concept. So I think it's really aimed at those towns to which, you know, they robbed their kids of a whole year, which we didn't. We worked really hard to prevent that from happening. So I'd like to see, you know, if we could get phased in. I rather work on that than eliminating the Wednesdays first if we had to choose. But again, I don't know all the logistics, so Eliza would have to talk more to that. But if that makes it easier to phase in, then I rather phase in first, and then we would knock out that Wednesday. Plus, I don't know, like, does that give more time for cleaning or whatever? Like, I just have questions about that. So those would be my questions of, you know, is the Wednesday necessary for any cleaning stuff? Does it make it easier to phase in if we have, you know, that we don't have to mess with the specials times and all that for now? And then can we knock that out last?
Go ahead, Michael.
I don't know. Eliza might kick me under the table here, but I don't know if you, if we could add this to the meeting on the 8th, the budget meeting, and the second half of that could be to kick around some ideas about what bringing more kids might look like, or whether she'd want to wait a week or something before.
Well, I was going to propose March 4th. So if you want to do the 8th, that's fine.
So you're saying March 4th attached to a COVID metrics meeting?
Which is probably a quicker meeting than the March 8th one, is how I just saw that. The COVID ones tend to be not as long as a budget meeting, if that makes a difference to you.
I also like the idea of having our numbers go down for a couple of weeks. Just because they've been improving, but it's like, I don't know what the deal with Southampton is, why we're struggling. You know, we're on the struggle bus without distancing pretty hard. So, you know, it just seems like for whatever reason, we're in that part of the storm and we got to come out the other side. But everywhere around us is going down, which is great. So I anticipate that we'll follow at some point. But I'd like to see us come down out of that, or at least trend down so that we know we're going in the right direction. Because it's been, you know, a bit of a roller coaster, and the infection rate curve is starting to flatten a little bit. So, you know, as I looked at the graph, that starts to happen, and then a few weeks later it starts to go up again. So we don't know that that's going to happen, but I want it to be still nosediving for just a little bit longer before we take that next step. Because right now we're right where they want us to be. They're happy with what we're doing. Like I said, there are other school systems they're very unhappy with, but I don't think we're one of them.
I would rather have that discussion at the budget meeting or after the budget meeting on the 8th rather than the 4th.
Okay, so our COVID meetings are the 4th, 11th, 18th, and 25th, right? Looking at Thursdays. Mm-hmm. So we could start on the 11th, you know, if we think the budget's going to go longer, which would I do. I think we're probably going to spend at least 90 minutes on the budget, you know, so that the committee has a full understanding of what goes into it and all that. And perhaps that gives us enough, again, not to make a decision on the 11th, just to have an open dialogue and discussion. And if there are other stakeholders that want to be heard or that we feel should be heard, you know, whether they want to do through written form or actually appear and be part of the conversation, it gives us a little time to set that up.
And we're assuming that if we're combining cohorts for all kids to come back, even if it's in a phased approach and it's sometime in April, that we wouldn't be at 6 feet apart because we can't get all kids back. Okay.
Correct. Also thinking that this is going to be April, we will probably be in an area where more windows can be open within the school, right? The temperatures are going to be, you know, March 27th is spring and we hit 60 degrees.
Are we thinking tent weather then for some reason?
So
how well did that work out in the fall with having those outdoor tents, Elisa?
They were good, but when the wind blows a little bit too hard in certain spots of the school, it's like a wind tunnel.
Is there any reason we want to go in that direction again come springtime when it's warm enough?
I do, because it provides shade, and so kids are resilient and they'll sit on the ground, but we don't want them sitting in the hot sun for, 25, 30 minutes at a time. So I think teachers felt really comfortable being able to go outside and get that fresh air and spend some time. It just puts your mind at ease about being inside the building when the temperature starts to go up. So I definitely want to be able to do that. I know we have to purchase a couple new ones because a couple of them were damaged.
That's where I was heading with that. Maybe we needed to make sure we've got all that lined up come springtime, because I'm sure they'll be in high demand for other districts too, probably.
I just won't put my trash cans out because it seems to blow the hardest when.
All right, so we're gonna pick up this conversation again on March 11th.
Okay. Is that also the discussion for if we will be postponing or canceling April vacation, or is that not on the table?
It's always on the table. And yeah, that would be the spot to start talking about it, unless
Maybe even sooner if we want to give people enough advance notice.
That's,
too late.
I've been asking people about it. I mean, if you really wanted to do that, you know, you got to work it out with the teacher's contract, and it does have some implications for the other districts, although that could probably be worked around. But that would really have to be thought about ASAP, I would think.
Yeah, I negotiated vacation time with teacher contracts and people who already have plans.
Well, now, Juliette, no one's supposed to be traveling outside the state, so that argument doesn't hold there. But under what provision of the contract? The school calendar falls solely within the domain of the school committee, and we're not changing the number of work days. The contract does say the school will start no sooner than this and end no later than this, and that there'll be, I think it's 184 school days or 184 work days. Not that I don't want to have the conversation, I just... Yeah, well, I mean, that would be a question we could ask our attorneys about whether or not that constitutes a change in working conditions or whatever. I wouldn't want to comment on that right now. But even apart from the obligation, just the planning aspects of that with food service deliveries and different things, we'd want to be the bus company. Those things, we would want to know those things as soon as we could. So I think if the committee doesn't matter, I'll craft an email to the legal and try and get that back by our March 4th, not for necessarily action, but to share the information so we know the ramifications one way or the other. Fair enough. So we won't make a decision tonight, but I'll try and get legal opinion before our next meeting.
And we should probably see if we can just get the general input of the union representation on that position. They no doubt have heard us discussing it now, so they know it's in play. And you would also have the issue of, because we've looked at this, you know, in other places I've been to get rid of one of these 2 vacations, and what it often comes back to is so many educators, whether they're teachers or paraprofessionals, are also parents, and if they, I mean, now the child care issues have all exploded. I guess maybe it wouldn't be as much of a deal, but if you have to work and your kids are on vacation, that has come up as a roadblock in the past. Maybe it is no longer in the current circumstances as much as a roadblock. I don't know. So I think only during the pandemic does it not apply, because everyone's dealing with that right now. Yeah.
So the idea would be to eliminate so that we don't have spike in cases. So if we don't see a spike in cases in the next week or 2 as a result of February vacation, then that's what we're trying to avoid, right? To see what the play out after February break is, to see if we can eliminate that for April break.
Yeah, that would be the reason why I would want to look at it. Okay. Next item, we're under new business now. The first item is school choice participation. Now, I put this on the agenda because traditionally this is a March vote of the committee. And I figured just because of what it is and its impact to Norris, that we should talk about it tonight. I don't know if there's a recommendation one way or the other. But if we don't act on it, then we need to do the vote at our next meeting. So correct me if I'm wrong. Is this where we reaffirm whether or not we want to continue to participate in school choice, and then the administration determines how many seats?
Correct.
Okay. So I just gave a real quick explanation, but was that enough for everybody to understand what school choice item is for us right now? Okay. So because of where we are, and I don't know that, I guess I would ask the question, can we take a year off from increasing school choice? Because if we're struggling with, well, I don't know where the openings are right now. You know, if we were to add additional kids, you know, is that in the K through second grades? And by doing so, based on our current enrollments, would we then be pushing the boundaries to where we would be over the number of kids and not be able to maintain the 6 feet? Are we exasperating the situation if we go through third through sixth by the school choice of bringing kids in from other communities, assuming that they want to come to Norris? Is that just going to make our process more difficult to get more of the Southampton kids back into the school? So those are my open-ended questions.
And so I can't remember the exact number, but I know that based on the census that we've already been able to kind of tap into and look at, we have a bigger number of students coming to kindergarten next year than we have at this point in like the last 3 or 4 years. Oh. So we already know that number is going to be bigger. Not that we're full already, because we're not. We still have room, but we always, the census doesn't catch everybody. We always have people, enrolling their students in June, July, and August to say, hey, I live in town now, I have a 5-year-old and they have to come to school. But with that said, and with the pandemic, like you were saying, John, and we don't want to fill up all the spots because we want to be able to keep everybody safely in school, we typically just start with the siblings of the students that are already school of choice now and in kindergarten. So the kids that are entering kindergarten who happen to be siblings of kids that are already school of choice, we take first. And that's one way of kind of, being cautious with that number. Right now, we know of 3. So it's a very, very small number if we just take siblings. But the question tonight is really, are we or aren't we, right? And then it's my job to kind of look at numbers and everything, but I wouldn't stack up anything knowing that. And I've been really cautious over the last few years because we have lost, 2 classroom teachers over the last 7 years that I replaced with other staff, like Sarah, I shouldn't use a name, but special ed team leader, the language-based classroom teacher, things like that. So, we have some room in some grade levels, but we don't have like 10 kids looking to get into 5th or 6th grade ever for school of choice. It's usually 1 or 2.
And it's one of the reasons why the incoming kindergarten enrollment looks bigger. Is it have anything to do with folks that withheld their children for a year and kept them home? Should have been kindergarten this year. Early on, you said there were some kindergartens that just didn't come in.
There might be 1 or 2, but I can't say overwhelmingly that that's happened.
Would they just come into 1st grade and skip kindergarten? If they were kindergarten age and the parents held them at home for a year, would they then start in 1st grade?
They don't have to. They can.
Right.
Okay. So and then there's a financial impact for every school choice child that comes in. There's additional monies into the coffer outside of the budgetary money that we receive. Not that should be a consideration for us doing this, but it's a reality. And just, clear full disclosure, those are the funds that we've been depleting to keep everything running. So once the money's gone, it's gone. And, we don't have the ability to go back and get additional funds anywhere.
It would be nice to refresh those coffers whenever possible. Are we expecting a lasting decrease in enrollment as a result of anybody that got their kids pulled out from this year?
Say that again, Greg.
Are we expecting a lasting decrease to our overall enrollment for families that may have been not having their students attend and going remote full the time this year?
Like Florida virtual?
Exactly, yeah. I mean, if we're going to see, even a 1 or 2% decrease, should we try and offset that with school choice where possible to avoid a funding decrease?
I can't imagine that those kids are not going to come back.
Okay.
We actually have a couple that, have already said when they want their kiddos to come back now that it feels like spring has sprung, which could potentially be a problem in kindergarten because we have 14 kids in the class, 6 feet apart, can't add much more. These kids are enrolled at Norris. They're on Florida virtual. They want to come back in person. So that, that's what's kind of why I'm saying I'm feeling it over the last couple of weeks. I've had these phone calls, and all of a sudden you realize, oh God, what if the kids that were homeschooled now want to come back? What if the Florida virtual kids now want to come back? We have K1 and 2 full in with just about at capacity in K and 2 for sure, and we're at 6 feet.
Can you set a time limit as like where you're either staying remote till the end or you make the choice to go? Because I know a lot of schools did that as of a certain point, like past April, you can't change it.
Well, the Department of Ed is allowing like 4 to 6 weeks, and we have been really good about allowing people to kind of go, because the teachers really wanted the kids to be in school, to come back to school. So, but then because we've been so accommodating, it kind of gets us into a little bit of trouble, because, then when it comes time for the report card, everybody's looking at everybody else saying, whose job is it now? You know what I mean? Who had the child the most during this semester? And it kind of gets sticky. But we did tell parents we weren't going to do it as quickly as we were doing it before. But I can't say that we wouldn't allow it to happen. I would rather wait until the end of the trimester in order for switches to happen. So once we said that, we had parents calling already saying, okay, I want them to switch like March, whatever. And they gave us a date. So we were prepared for that.
So if the committee does not take action on school choice tonight and defers until the March meeting, is that going to impact you at all? Would you be looking to approve school choice? I mean, the vote traditionally was in March.
I would love it if you took the vote tonight to say yes, just so that we can, now I know what I have to look at. If it just prolongs the decision, people are calling now. People are asking now, where do I fill out the application? Or I guess if you say no, then I just tell everybody we don't have school of choice. So it's one way, at least I'm getting something done,
Again, just my take. I guess I don't have an objection to the siblings, I guess right off the bat, because, why are we going to penalize a member of our community that we've already accepted? But I think I would have an issue if extending to folks that don't have a current child in Norris to enter into Norris, and it impacts a child of age who's a resident of Southampton and their education, to the extent, simply put, that if we all of a sudden go over the limit in second grade and we can't keep the 6 foot for the residents,
right.
I wouldn't want a new school choice child to be the issue that we have to do that. Bobby, did you want? Sorry.
Yeah, no, I was just going to say that anyways, I'll just say it. You could always vote to continue to be a school choice school with no openings for the FY22 school year. But that would keep you listed as a school choice school.
Could we go in the middle and say that we're gonna continue with school choice, but initially limit it to only siblings of existing students? No, don't do that.
You can't legally do that. You have to declare a number of openings by grade level.
Well, we know of 3 siblings, right?
Right. Well, so you may say you may identify that number of openings, but they have to be posted as the number of openings that exist.
We must see some other weird use cases too for school choice, like parents who move out of town but still want to keep their kids going to Norris. Do we ever see anything along those lines, Eliza? And where would that fall? That's like you're retaining an existing student that's already been there for several years.
We don't. I work with the Southampton Police Department, and I follow the handbook protocol for school choice, our policy, which is if we find out that someone moves out of Southampton who's a school choice, if a student is a Southampton student but moves out of Southampton and wants to keep their kid here, and we find out, usually if it's September, October, November, December, January, February, March, we make them move. But if it's towards the end of the year where it's more detrimental to make them move to a new school at the very end of the year, we let them stay. But we usually find out about it because the kids are the ones who say, I live in Chicopee now.
No, my question was, do we ever have parents request to keep them in via the process of school choice as they're moving out of town?
Yes, we've had that happen. And if we have spots available, we can always do that. Like sometimes in 5th and 6th grade, like I said, we don't have, we haven't filled those spots and it's still open and we just ended up not having any applications. So we will let them know that we do have a spot if they want to stay, and then they,
okay.
So that's good. But what we're saying now is if we accept school of choice students, but we only have 3 spots and those spots happen to be siblings, then all those other spots are gone. And that's not going to happen for anybody.
But, you know, if you approve it tonight, as Bobby said, we can come back. You can end up not deciding not to have any, or you can even, Eliza can come back with a calculation of, you know, 2 4th graders wouldn't jeopardize 6 feet of social distancing, but 3 might, or, you know, that you could try and determine that before you announce your number of openings.
So we would say essentially yes, but we wouldn't determine the actual volume or specifics at this meeting then, and wait for Eliza to come back to approve that next time?
Well, yes, next time, but how much?
That can be down the road. There's no hurry for that.
But I thought Eliza said she would prefer that we did approve it tonight so she could start working on it. So we could defer the issue tonight, but we have, by my calculations, we have 7 more meetings before our March regular meeting where we could tack it on to any one of those based on, unless you're prepared tonight, Eliza, to say this grade, how many seats and all that.
No, that's not, I'm not sure that goes through the committee anyway, right? I
don't think we've ever approved that before.
No, but what Michael said is the committee could approve X number of seats. We could cap it.
Well, I mean, you could approve it tonight. And Eliza doesn't have to announce how many openings there are until I don't even think there is an actual time. I didn't typically do it until the summer, although families get anxious.
We like to do it usually like in April.
Yeah, but it could be May.
Right, and sometimes spots open up that we didn't anticipate before. You know, so there might be, I might say on, you know, April 15th, Norris School is participating in the School of Choice program again, and I have spots available in K1 and 3, and there are, you know, 4 spots in kindergarten, 2 spots in 1, and 4 spots in grade 3, and then later I might announce that there's a couple spots in grade 5 or a couple in grade 6 or something.
But the principal could come back to you with that plan and the rationale for it at a future date.
So the committee is within its bounds to put a cap on it and then adjust appropriately down the road.
It could be. It's not required that a principal, you know, it's not required that the school committee calculate and vote on the number of seats. However, it's common practice for that discussion to happen and for there to be a vote sometimes. Yep.
So it sounds like we would be participating in school choice, but we could then figure out in May, maybe we just have 1 spot for it, or we just have 2 spots for sibling, you know, whatever it doesn't mean that we're opening up for all of, you know, 20 people or 30 to come in.
And we could come back with a plan that you could vote on. I should have been a little clearer what I said, but yeah.
All right, so then I'd be inclined to defer this issue unless a committee member wants to make a motion.
I'm kind of leaning towards approving it just because, you know, I think that we have benefited from having the resources of the school choice program. And otherwise, I don't know that we would have made it through the year. I mean, Bobby can shake her head if she disagrees, but I just don't think we can, I can't operate without my rainy day fund.
But Austin, to that point, you know, Eliza or Bobby, how many school choice children do we currently have right now?
Oh, good question.
I don't know. Didn't I report it? Is it 48? Hold on.
48. That's 2 classrooms worth of students. Yes, it's spread out over the 7 grades, but it's the bodies of 2 full classrooms.
So why couldn't we just?
And I'm sorry, Austin, there's nothing we can do. Once they're accepted and they're in the school, they're in the school, correct? We can't then all of a sudden revoke their school choice status. So you know, those we're living with the consequences that previous committees did, and some might argue did for the exact reason you just noted, to build the coffers. You know.
But we could do Bobby's plan. Or not that it's Bobby's plan, but her comment was, you know, that we just don't declare any openings for this year so that we potentially keep our 48 or however many. But we just say, well, we're not taking on any new students. I think that was within bounds as I understood it.
So is your motion to approve the participation in school choice, but at this point set it as 0 availabilities until further information comes forward to act on by the committee? Is that what you're thinking?
Right. Yeah, that we would pause accepting new students, but we could keep the ones we have.
Okay.
If we don't accept the siblings in kindergarten of the school of choice kids that are already in the building, we may then lose the ones that are already in the building.
But we can't limit it to the siblings anyways, because Michael said that wouldn't be legal.
You can, but you just have to announce you have that number of openings.
In those particular grades.
And we have 3
siblings. And if your policy is to go with siblings first, then that's okay. So if you know there's 2 siblings, you have 2 openings, and you know they're going to go to the siblings. Right now, we're just voting to tell DESE, it's a DESE mandate. Tell us whether or not you're going to do school choice next year, period. No number, you don't have to give them any number of seats. So we would just say yes. And then we could change our mind, and then we could decide there's no openings in May. Or there could be.
And we won't know, you know, everyone will be vaccinated. There'll be COVID that's super suppressed. We may be back to, you know, 3 feet, 4 feet, whatever it is, 6 inches, John, that you like. So, I mean, we may not be under the 6-foot pool noodle distance anymore. So at that point, but I think it's harmless to go ahead and say yes, and then, you know, and then hold. And I don't think we need to specify anything further than that, and then come back.
Yep.
So Austin, you want to make the motion. I don't want to make it for you. I just want to, because I want to hear exactly what you're asking us to vote on.
So my motion would be that we participate, or that we approve the participation in school choice for the upcoming school year, and that we defer the discussion on number of seats to a later time once school administrators have been able to review the data.
And I second.
All right, there's a second. Under discussion, I would ask the maker of the motion clarification. By deferring the conversation, is that in essence putting the number of available slots for next year as of tonight at 0?
Well, I think what I was suggesting is leaving it as a non-value, not a 0, but a non-value.
Okay, and that's fine. I just want clarification. So because that's how you're wording it, I can't support this motion. Without having the budget meeting, without knowing what the financial impact is, adding additional burdens to the Norris system at potentially the detriment of the Norris residents, I can't just support that. I could support setting it at 0, and then after we hear the budget and we have a plan come back to us and we raise the cap, I would be in favor of that, but not just to leave it blank and unstated at the moment. Eliza?
So we have 6 school of choice students in 6th grade who will be moving on. So it's not going to be any addition to the budget to take 6 new students coming in, correct?
Bobby's muted, but I think she agreed.
Well, of course, depending on the grade and the room within each grade.
Right.
Yeah.
But actually, it would be an increased burden per se, because 6 students leaving means 6 times whatever we get is coming out of our
30,000
savings.
Right, but we should be able to run, whether we can or not is a different subject. We should be able to operate the North School on the tax revenue from the town, because its obligation is strictly the residents of this town. This is, school choice is the gravy that comes on the potatoes, right? But we can still have the potatoes without the gravy. It's a nice to have, and under normal circumstances, I would be in favor of it. But those 6 new bodies coming in to offset the 6 leaving, if they all happen to hit 1st grade, and if we happen to be in the 1st quarter of next year and we're still under the 6-foot rule, then, and we have to kick 1st grade out, I don't know. But if there's no other discussion.
I totally get that, but no department in this town is really doing a good job at being able to operate on the tax revenue that we have. We have, reds everywhere. So, I get the utopian argument, but, I guess in the real world, we use those funds. So I don't know what we would do. Does a not approving school choice boot out the 48 students?
No.
No, once they're in, they're in.
What if there's an accepted, and I don't know how amendments work, but say to amend to cap at 3 added to the motion?
I just have to say that this is my 7th year at Norris, and I've never had the school committee tell me how many school of choice students I'm going to take in a school year. I mean, I realize that it's a pandemic, but can you just trust me that I'm going to do the right thing and not take in 28 school of choice students and pack up the classrooms so that we can't come back to school full in? And I'm going to have to, I think Michael and I should also ask council about whether this is even legal to do.
Well, right now, Desi just wants to know whether or not you want to participate. There's not really and that's all you're voting. And you could ask the principal to come back at a future date with a plan, which you then could deny, actually, if you wanted to, and say, no, we don't want to. That's too many kids in 4th grade. It might end up jeopardizing the 6-foot rule, which we might end up needing. Then you could have that discussion in the future. By saying yes tonight, you wouldn't be making a commitment to any number at any grade.
Okay. We're going to vote on the motion. Austin?
Rogers, aye.
Julianne?
Tauscher, aye.
Allison?
Radon, aye.
Greg?
Bennett, aye.
Lumbrud, no. Okay. Now we have the 2021-2022 school calendar.
So let's find it.
Now, this as well is traditionally a March vote. We're trying to be very efficient here for all the right reasons.
So this is a draft calendar, pretty much not just mine. It is put together by the principals in the district, and the superintendent sees what we're doing. Pretty general, same. This isn't COVID pandemic calendar with cohorts or anything. It's just a regular school calendar. We did eliminate the half day in September for professional development, and we went right to, the first day of school for staff is August 30th. First day for students is September 1st. And then preschool, I believe, is September 8th. Yep. And I don't want to go through the whole thing, but the October holiday and then parent-teacher conferences in November.
Elisa, yep. Is the September 28th a half day? It's listed in the it's listed in the legend.
It is listed. It's not highlighted. Yes, I'm not sure. When I looked at the calendar today and I saw that it wasn't highlighted, I thought we had gotten rid of it, but it may still be there, which we will need it coming back to school in September after testing and finding out things for kids and how we're going to move forward with interventions after having the summer off. That's what we usually do on that day. So thank you for catching that.
I'm sorry, on September 28th or August 28th?
September 28th.
Okay.
Students come into school and then we start doing our interim assessment. The FASBridge assessment that we do in the spring, we would do again in the fall. But everything else is, 3 days for conferences in the fall, 2 days in March. And then the 13th is another half day for professional development. And then the October full day and the January full day. But other than that, it's pretty straightforward. There's nothing different in here.
Discussion?
Are you going to check if that September half day is going to be a definite or?
Yes, I will check with the other principals, but I am pretty sure that it is there.
So highlighted days are like green days are, where's the legend? Sorry.
Oh,
green days, professional development. Wait.
Yeah, the green days are either half days for parent-teacher conferences or professional development days or half days in general.
Okay.
And then the yellow days are the first day of school and the last day of school. And then holidays and vacations are in blue.
Okay, thank you.
So this is projecting that the last day of school will be June 4th. Is that June 14th? Is that June 14th with 5 snow days or without? Meaning it's without.
This calendar includes 180 days of school, so that does not include 5 snow days. Yeah. If there were 5 snow days, it would push it back.
And never mind. Anybody else?
Are there usually 5 snow days that are included, or is it always kind of pushed back? Or what's the 5-day snow day rule? Sorry, I'm totally naive to this.
Yeah, there isn't. It's just kind of a weird artifact. It doesn't really mean anything. You just add you have however many snow days you need at the end of the year.
Okay.
But that's the simplest way to explain it. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
If we had 6 actual snow days, we would add 6 days on.
Yep.
The cap isn't 5.
Nope. No cap. 180 days of school.
Right. So I would think that if I had said 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, that June 21st was the last day of school, and that includes 5 snow days, then you would understand that, you know what I mean? Like, we might not use those 5 days, but this just says the last day is June 14th, and there may be snow days after that.
Okay.
And that usually should get printed on the calendars that go home.
Has it ever been discussed for maybe combining some of the taking a whole day off instead of doing so many half days in clusters? Or has that never been?
For what? For PD?
Like for well, some of them are PD, but like the 3-day conference, like, is there ever a way to combine some of that into like an entire day off of conference instead of multiple half days all in a row?
Well, we can talk.
I know the whole district does it. I don't mean just to.
Yeah.
Yeah, you'd end up needing to pay teachers more. They'd be working more days. That's the.
So the kids wouldn't have a day of school. The day of school would go somewhere else, but the teachers would have to get paid for that full day of them for having conferences, right?
So just going back a year ago when this came up again, that this calendar is one of the evil necessities, because the calendar isn't solely designed for the purposes of Norris. It's designed with the 5 participants of the group in there and their specific contracts, which may have certain provisions in there, i.e. half days, that we don't have in ours. And as I was told last year when this was discussed, and I took objection to it last year, this has already been set in stone, and we are asked to just approve it.
Our conference dates, not necessarily the dates themselves, but is that something in contracts like that they have to be allowed a certain number? Or is that not?
Parent-teacher conferences? I can't speak for the others. The Norris contract does specify that piece is in
okay.
In agreement.
That's what I was wondering.
Existing STA contract. So again, even if we wanted to make changes, we would be shot down. So I will make a motion to approve it as this is, with my objection that I still object to the process and how this is created. But I'll make the motion.
You could negotiate anything with the teachers.
No, I was told we'd have to negotiate with the 5 principals over this. This is the principal's calendar. Is anyone seconding my motion, or is this going to fail for that?
If we don't have a choice, yes, I'll second it.
Right. The motion made and second to approve the 2021-2022 draft calendar as presented by unanimous approval of our principals. Discussion? All in favor? Austin?
Rogers, aye.
Julianne?
Tauscher, aye.
Allison?
Radon, aye.
Greg?
Bennett, aye.
Mail number, aye. Next on the item is updating non-union job descriptions. I asked the superintendent to put this on. As I am hopeful, we are going to come to resolution with our last outstanding union contract. We would have addressed everything within Norris. The only thing left is we have two administrative positions within Norris, which is the principal and assistant principal. And because of this came up, because of the work we're doing at the 5-district agreement working group, where that group is putting in a process that at least on, I think we're proposing every 3 years, all job descriptions within central office are reviewed. The superintendent has informed us, rightfully so, that traditionally, once the job description is approved, there is a minimum, a mid, and a high salary range, and the hiring authority for that position is free to work anywhere within that scale without coming back to the committee. It's if they were it's a scale maxed out at 120,000 and they were going to offer 170,000, they couldn't do that. They have to work within these parameters, and looking at the job descriptions and knowing that what we've seen for job descriptions so far, they just haven't been updated. That being said, these two contracts, I haven't seen these job descriptions. They may be perfectly fine. They may have been updated last month. I don't know this, but to bring this in, utilize Superintendent Sullivan's expertise here, just kind of check the box on this and make sure everything's good to go, and then sail on. So in talking with him, the thought was bring this in under new business to put it on, and then refer it to executive session. Not tonight, but then have an in-depth conversation at executive session with all the right parties. That's all I'm looking for tonight. No? Nobody wants to do it?
Still thinking about it. Hold on.
Are you serious, Greg?
No. Hold on a second.
Lisa, I think he's going to call you.
I'm like, is someone sharing something that I'm not seeing? What am I looking at?
Can I give a little more context?
Absolutely.
All right. So the idea here is if you approve salary ranges within the job description for your administrators, then when the superintendent's trying to decide whether or not they should get a cost of living increase, or whether or not, and when they go to hire a new person, they have a range that they can operate in without needing to ask you to approve a dollar amount. And the range would not be large, but it would give them a little bit of latitude to work within.
Right.
So that's just giving you a little bit more wiggle room to get what you need then.
Well, you're right. And to clarify, this is the committee just setting the policy. Yep, we approved the job description as you present. For example, the building principal, I've got to think it's a fairly standard job description across the whole Commonwealth for an elementary school principal. There might be some tweaks because it's Norris. But the other thing is, not too long ago, in other areas outside of Southampton, right? Some contracts for non-union personnel were renewed at double-digit increments, and those individual committees found out only at the budget time. So by putting in the salary range, here's our minimum, here's our maximum, you're free to work within this range. And maybe then the policy is you're free to work within this range, but if you exceed 10% in any 1 year, you can still do that, but you have to notify the committee before you do it. Like, we wouldn't want to go from the minimum to the maximum in one year, right? Because in theory, this is going to be I don't know, I would think it's probably a $40,000 delta, between the minimum and the max to over time or whatever it is. But so I'm going to make the motion that we review them.
I'll second that.
At the ranges in executive session. Seconded by Greg. Any discussion? None?
So we haven't seen this yet. Like, this is something that we're going to talk about bringing it into executive session. Okay.
So that we can have the discussion.
Okay. All right.
Yep. Roll call. Allison.
Radon, aye.
Julianne.
Tauscher, aye.
Austin.
Rogers, aye.
Greg.
Bennett, aye.
And Lumber, aye. Next is superintendent asked us to add on, well, no, in conjunction. The administration asked us to add on substitute teacher pay. What would you like us to know about that?
I think we have a visual. Let's see. Let me just get this squared away. Okay. Hampshire Regional has a fairly highly developed scale for substitute pay, and all the principals and Bobby and I are looking at it together, but mostly what we are coming to you tonight to do is ask about making the teacher substitute pay $100 a day. And there are different pay rates used for long-term substitute teachers. If somebody's, taking over for somebody who's on a medical leave or something like that, they would get paid off of the teacher's salary scale. And then there's a column about paying paras $80 a day and nurses $25 an hour. So maybe Eliza can remind us what the current teacher substitute pay is. But as substitute pay rates, as minimum wages increase, it's harder to find somebody to be a substitute teacher. And I know in Franklin County last year, just about everybody had moved, if they hadn't been there already, to $100. So this is quite commonplace at this point.
And right now we're at 75 non-certified teacher, 83 certified teacher.
And so obviously a certified teacher is somebody that holds a valid certification or was formally certified.
Holds a valid certification.
Holds a valid certification in teaching in Massachusetts, but is not actively, so almost like a recent retiree would fall under this?
Yes. Yep. Okay. Or someone who, just got out of college and is certified to be a teacher but hasn't found a job yet. Someone who, maybe left teaching for one reason or other for childcare and then wants to get back into it. They can always renew their license and they're a certified person. We always look for certified teachers, but especially now, it has been so difficult to find people who want. And when, a couple times we had a sub that was subbing at the high school that could come down and sub for a couple days, and then they're making so much less at Norris compared to what they're making at the high school that they rather just stay at the high school and then they don't come back and sub for us. So district-wide, it's good to have the same rate of pay, I think, for everybody, because we're constantly competing for these people.
Yeah. So I did some quick math, and I didn't realize that we were only going to be asked to focus on column A. But column D is not in compliance with our existing contract, never mind the proposed one. So I did the math under I believe our existing contract, and assuming that a para at a level 1 under our existing contract worked a full day, they'd be entitled to two $15 awards, one for the first half, one for the second half. And then the hourly rate or the daily rate right now is $105. So an existing para who substitutes at Nora under our contract would be at $135.66, assuming they were the first year para. And this is saying 80.
Are you talking about a para that's already a para at Nora?
Para in the school, a brand new para in the school who's step 1, who is asked to substitute teacher, applying the terms of the contract, they would make $135.66 that day.
Okay. I think, John, this column is speaking more to, I have a para that called in sick today, and I want a para to sub for a para. An outside substitute comes in and subs for the para. I gotcha.
So yeah. Not a para going into a teacher's capacity for substituting.
Correct.
Okay.
My only question is why, I get why you would want to increase how much they get per day, but why is the non-certified versus the certified going to get the same?
That I was not 100% about that either. But my colleagues won that fight. And, I like to, advertise for a certified teacher sub whenever possible. So this does leave it up for anybody to just, I said, well, my daughter graduated, my daughter didn't graduate just last year from high school, but if someone graduates from high school a year ago and then all of a sudden they want to be a sub, they can, which there's not a problem with high school kids wanting to sub, but I feel like there should be a difference.
That part is, it's almost hurtful to the certified teacher. Like, oh, okay, so somebody off the street who's, a homemaker can, or, whatever, can make the same as me per day.
I think the feeling is just right now because of the pandemic, but that doesn't specify it here. I see that it is 100, so.
So if somebody was to come in to be a substitute teacher for a day and replace a teacher, not a special, but a classroom teacher, how many hours, is that the same as a para 6.75 hours?
Yes.
Okay. So, unless we're going to vote on this all the time, this won't pass mustard at $15. Right? 6.75 times 15 is $101.25. And granted, we're not at 15 yet. We're getting close to it, but I think everybody believes that that's at least what the living wage should be. But I also realize that you're trying to do something unified for the whole district. So are you having, I guess the other question I would ask is, are you having difficulty obtaining outside substitutes, knowing that this is a pandemic year, so that's just compounding the issue anyways?
Yes. Yep.
Yeah. So I guess I'd want to see that rate higher and different for a certified teacher.
Could it be like a 10% increase, or, you know, I see 50 and I see a 20% difference between the long term, but I don't know what it works out if you do like 110, 100, because then you've got just about the living wage and then over by 10%.
So like $110 a day for a certified teacher and $100 a day for non-certified?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, the committee can do that. This doesn't not need to be identical across all 5. Getting it closer is a good idea.
Yeah, but I also thought, I agree with Allison. I thought it was a little funny that the numbers were the same for the 2 different.
I know a lot of like newer college students who are certified take on those substitute roles to get some experience to take over a classroom. So I think it's almost, you know, a slap in the face. Like, why did I work so hard to be certified if I can do the same thing and make the same amount?
And just for reference point, in column B, 50% the BA base right now under our existing contract would be $124.15, and 70% BA base is $173.81. So I would think we'd want both those numbers to be under that to encourage them to take on the long-term sub if it happened to come up. I just say for reference what the existing agreements say. So, you know, how often, as a regular means of action, how often is this looked at each committee level? Just as needed, or? Because I noticed there's no previous date on this. So is this a new concept?
I want to say we talked about sub increases. I think we were at 65 and 70 just a couple of years ago. And then we're so now we're at 75 and 83.
Yeah.
I would say 2 to 3 years.
Currently, there is a little discrepancy between the non-certified and certified.
Right.
Okay. So that's not
75 to 83.
Okay.
Bobby, did you want to weigh in? No. Okay. What's the committee think about the no teacher certification, just making it $101 or $102, so that we'll be in compliance with the $15 minimum wage when that gets to us? So
Sounds fine.
No teacher 102, and then I would say the certified teacher. I mean, if you pay 105, I'd go another $10 higher, maybe 125. Because I don't think you want the purpose of $10 to be the issue as to whether or not you get a substitute teacher if you need one. I mean, we do budget independently for substitute teachers, right? And so it's, yeah.
Yes, I have a subline.
Yeah, I mean, I
eat up my subline a little faster, but
that's a good thing.
But if you're spending less time trying to find somebody, then you can be more efficient in other areas, and our reading levels will skyrocket. I like the other ones because they're percentages, so they will adjust as the contracts go up.
Yep.
So, okay, so the daily rate right now for a para, yeah. So I think that, well, so the $80 for a para gets us into, what's minimum wage now? $13 or $13.50? I think it's 13. Yeah, so the column D is not in compliance with minimum wage. So if it's $13 an hour now at 6.75, that's $87.75. So perhaps D there should just be the impact of whatever minimum wage is. You know, so it just automatically adjusts, but that works too until we go to 30, you know, because each year we're making that 50-cent increase. And I don't know if I'm just making this more complicated to send it back to all the other committees or not, but.
Yeah, have the other committees already voted on this?
No, this is what we started with is what Hampshire Regional currently operates under. I don't know how long they've had it. I don't think for too long. So this is the first committee to look at it this spring.
Perfect. Okay, good.
And just to say, not that it's right, but we don't have to comply with the state. We have to comply with the federal.
For minimum wage.
Right, to the best of my knowledge, which is still at, what, like 7?
7.25.
Yeah, yep. I'm not saying that's right. I'm just making it.
Good point.
Yeah. Any other thoughts on this, or?
How do you do getting nurse substitutes at $25 an hour, since we're talking about the rate there?
We don't.
Yeah. You don't have trouble, or you have trouble?
We have trouble.
Yeah. So like $35 an hour is probably what I would say is more accurate, but I don't know exactly how that compares to school.
Yeah, they're very hard to get. And it's typically, if you go through an agency, it's usually 50 or 55. So that's probably more realistic.
Mm-hmm.
I am lucky that I have 2 nurses, and most of the time I, don't need someone, but we try to get people so that we're fully staffed.
Yeah. So 35 sounds better than 25, because I don't think you'll get anyone at 25.
If we go with no certification, maybe we can get 25.
You can get LPN.
Getting late.
Yes, it is.
Okay, so this looks good to me. Do we want to accept it?
There's a motion made by Julianne to accept this as amended. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Seconded by Allison. No discussion. Roll call. Allison.
Right on, aye.
Julianne.
Tauscher, aye.
Austin.
Rogers, aye.
Greg.
Bennett, aye.
Lumbra, aye. Motion passes. This concludes the public portion of tonight's meeting. The chair will entertain a motion to enter executive session for 2 purposes. The first being under Mass General Law, Chapter 38, 21A, subsection 2, negotiations and collective bargaining with teachers. And the second, which I'm missing the reference on state law, but it is for preparation for potential litigation / negotiations with non-collective bargaining personnel. The chair does not anticipate any votes occurring in executive session, nor will the chair reconvene in public session tonight. Is there?
So moved.
Second.
Motion made and seconded to enter into executive session by roll call. Allison.
Right on, aye.
Julianne.
Tauscher, aye.
Austin.
Rogers, aye.
Greg.
Bennett, aye.
And Lumbra, aye. Thank you. I'm good. Good night,
Good night, everyone else.
Good night, everyone.
Adios.
The time is 9:03.
I need a 2-minute men's room break. I'll be right back.
I'm going to stop the recording.